Alright, should be making a video. A draft physics video. DraftScience on YouTube and such. Alright, enough for the introductions. Some comments, but just not much. Keep up the terrific work. Sure. Ken Wheeler just talks pseudoscience tech babble. Well, it's obviously more than that. It's a whole philosophy of babble. And has some at its core some sort of sparky thing, and therefore it makes people feel like there's something. See, if you put a little piece of glitter as the elemental substance of the universe, as a little piece of shiny glitter, I guess it makes people feel like their life means something because they're made out of glitter, and versus just putting a little black dot, as a bit, as a pixel, if you wanted to use that terminology. I mean, to me, that's a way of understanding the universe, is there's locations in the universe, and each location, something's happening. Either nothing or something, a little bit moving in a direction, actually. And that's really all there really is. There's momentum in the universe, and there's a certain amount of it. And at any one moment, the momentum can be in different places. My hand can be here going like this, and then it can be here going like this. That's all there is. There's nothing else happening. There's just momentum, just movement. And from our perspective, we see, only the matter stuff moving. Like when we see light, we're not seeing photons, We're actually destroying them and having them, well, not destroying, we're absorbing them and having them move electrons. And so it's the movement of the electrons that is really what we're seeing, technically, kind of. Well, anyway. So, but yes, I mean, if you listen to Ken Wheeler, I mean, I watched some old video of his called Light or something, something missing secrets of blah blah the universe. And, he thinks light is doing the infinity symbol. I mean, he thinks each photon is doing all of that work for every Planck constant of movement. That all of this stuff, so there's tornadoes swirling off of it in both directions, and all this crap is happening. So he's taken something so simple, that is a little quanta of momentum, that represents what a photon imposes on something, and turned it into this insanely complex thing, and then claimed his theory is simple. And it's just, no, it's incredibly complicated. Why are photons doing how are they doing all that stuff? How does the photon know to do all this hyperboloids and toroids and all this crap all day? I mean, it's doing it all the time, constantly. Every little bit of space it travels, it's doing all of this crap. I mean, who can believe any of this I mean, it's just amazing babble. But yes, it just has to do with people like glitter. And if you don't put glitter on it, they won't play with it. Ken Wheeler's a fraud. He's an idiot. A dupe. Clearly, somewhere, there's some reason why, and a brick fell off a building, hit him in the head, and he thought it was an angel or something. I don't know. There's got to be a reason he decided to go completely back-assward and start thinking that, people 2,000 years ago had all the right answers, when again they hadn't figured out what a bacterium is. They didn't know what thunder and lightning were. I mean, come on. Yeah, they have all the answers, except all the simple ones. Anyway, he just talks rubbish. Yes, it is rubbish. I pity the fools who follow him. I pity any fool who follows anybody. But it's hard to pity people who are belligerently stupid. And you have to kind of be belligerently stupid to believe that Ken Wheeler is giving you a simple explanation. And that he gives a shit about having anything called a rational or sensible conversation when he, uses all of these unnecessarily archaic language, you could almost say, like dialectation or something, instead of just saying verbiage or the way I'm going to say it. He uses some jerky, stupid word that like rarefaction. Instead of saying contraction. He uses the word contraction and expansion. So instead of saying expansion, he says rarefaction. Now, why would somebody who thinks this guy is sincere and he cares about, communicating, why would that make any sense to somebody? Wouldn't they say, oh, he's supposed to be making it simpler, and yet he's using more complex language? I mean, you could just say expansion. Instead, he says rarefaction. When was the last time you heard the word rarefaction? No. Who uses that? Oh, yeah, that's right. Nobody. Anyway, and I don't know what this is. Do not pirate. Sid Wilson. I don't know that. Sorry, no use. All right, spam folder's interesting this week, so that's the place to go. We've got a couple of comments in there, so we'll play with them. Let's see, really too radical for most people. Thank you for your service. I don't know why they threw that in the spam folder, so I will approve that one. All right, and then after that, the soul Ken is speaking of is not your body. Well, obviously, if it's soul, why would I think it's body? Yeah, I wouldn't think so. Hormones, emotions, consciousness. Well, I mean, consciousness isn't, consciousness is an emergent property. It's a function of sorts. So it doesn't have any physical reality in a sense. It's made of a physical substance, but it itself is not a physical thing. It's a byproduct. And same with feelings. And my personality is clearly a byproduct of a whole bunch of associations my brain has made between thing A and thing B. Dog and sidewalk. It's connected a bunch of things. And that's the definition of my personality. So we know that's a physical thing. That's all stored in this big giant brain that has 100 billion neurons in it for a reason, and burns up 20% of the energy your body's using. Anyway, it's just something, or 40%, whatever it is. It's just something that is experiencing all these things and experiencing, in what sense? It's creating, the brain creates the phenomenon of a sense of experience. There is nothing experiencing. All right? There's just the phenomenon of I'm experiencing. So you're the one who doesn't have it right, butthead. These things, and identifying them because it is a state of ignorance, let's call it. So this is just stupid. It's state of ignorance. It has nothing to do. Obviously, every organism on Earth that has a learning brain, that is a feeling brain. I mean, feelings don't have any use unless you can learn from your experience. Reward and punishment, that's what feelings are for. Reward and punishment only makes sense if the thing can remember what it got rewarded for and what it got punished for. So you already have to have some sort of sophistication in terms of how this neural network is put together. But this has nothing to do with ignorance or intelligence or false knowledge or real knowledge or any. That's not what the subject is in terms of what consciousness is, idiot. Your consciousness isn't substantially different if you're a fool or if you're brilliant. Idiots. Just like when you dream, you're a lot more ignorant. You're not more ignorant. You just have a completely less detailed, rigorous definition of the laws of life. So things can violate things that you have established as laws. But you're really quite you in the dream experience. You're just you minus some key fundamental bits of knowledge. But you still remember who your father was and your mother, and you still remember all kinds of things. You still do remember them. Okay, anyway. Then when you are awake, you don't even realize you're in a dream. Well, sometimes you do, and it wakes you up even. You say, this is too silly. And you say, oh, I must be dreaming. And it wakes you up. That's my experience. The soul is much more ignorant than that. Then why are we even talking about it? I mean, why is it even a relevant concept? Why should I be bothered with something that's more ignorant than that? Obviously it's more broken than this. So why am I bothering, wasting my time? Why don't I just talk about what brains do and just fuck the soul altogether, since it's uselessly ignorant? This is just such baby talk. It thinks it is the body. Whatever. I mean, you say so. I don't have any fucking thing called a soul, shithead. Alright? I just have programming. I just have life experience where I've associated thing A with thing B, and then sometimes with thing C and things D. My brain is connected the dots, and that's all there is. There's nothing else going on, you dumb fuck. It hush. Nothing to do with the soul like religious people think of it. I don't even know what they think. They think your soul is you, you know, what I think and feel and have, my attitudes and all that crap, and somehow there's a fingerprint of your brain. It floats up to some special world and pretends to be you still. I guess. It sounds preposterously silly. And it has nothing to do with conscious creator God. Says you again. You're going to speak for all the soulites, you know, and all the other Ken followers. You say so. Well, it's clearly Ken is saying he's not an atheist. He won't say right out, yes, I'm not a fairy taleist. I don't believe fairy tales are real. So until you prove the fairy tale has something to do with a physical fact, yes, I don't believe it. That's right. I'm anti-lies and made-up stories. So, I mean, he doesn't even have the courage to say it. So, obviously, he does seem to be believing in some sort of creator God. Because he won't just say, that's all nonsense. Nothing intelligent made this shit. It's a bunch of people that many thousands of years ago probably have experimented with things like meditation. They experimented with dying a lot, okay? And diseases, simple ones. You know, they died of the common cold a lot, etc., and have figured things out. Well, no, the whole point is they hadn't figured anything out, and they were living a much more brutal life because they hadn't figured anything out. Humans exist in this modern form for at least 150,000 years. It's likely you were a caveman during most of that time. Well, duh. They were caveman. You know, you could just go back almost 2,000 years ago, and life was pretty caveman. So this is just such horseshit. Time and didn't figure some things out. Right, we don't figure things out either. We're relying on people who already did it for us, most people. I mean, obviously I'm spending some time doing some figuring. But you dumbasses are just regurgitating silly conversations. You might as well be talking about astrology. Well, astrology doesn't mean that the stars actually control what you're doing. It just means that the universe is in a certain condition, and that condition is part of the condition, and that's part of the condition of who you are, and blah, blah, you know, some sort of rubbish. You're just talking shit. Ken is just guilty of making 10-minute videos about subjects that would take probably months to explain. Well, then he shouldn't say it's simple, then. He shouldn't be insulting the intelligence of other people who aren't getting it. If it's so fucking complicated that you have to spend months explaining it. There are lots of evidence if you research the subject. Well, says fucking you, liar. You have no evidence of any of this crap. Oh, you preposterous liar. For, I don't know, a couple of years at least. Oh, you have to... Yeah, that's a question? There's lots of evidence if you research the subject. For, I don't know, a couple of years at least. For, I didn't know for a couple of years at least, question mark. That's not a question, you lunatic. That's a statement by you. Yeah. Now, there's nothing to research. There's no evidence of any soul or any special anything. There's not even any evidence of the stuff physics is clinging to, like entanglement and all that crap. There's no real evidence. Pathetic crap. Alright, that belonged in the spam folder for sure. Alright, so back to physics. Maybe. So he has an icon of abstract crap, and he's going to tell me what reality is. To Tin Man P and DraftScience regarding video response. You could just say it's a comment on that video, so I would think you don't really need to say what you're commenting on, but you're commenting on the video. That is the response. The prof says falling is the cause of this obvious asymmetry. So by prof he means me. Falling involves inertia. Inertia is not a real thing, okay? Things either have velocity or they don't have velocity. There's no inertia. There's no resistance to having velocity. All there is you have to absorb it, and that means your matter has to spread it over its entire mass. And so if you have a very heavy mass, one photon hits you, the one photon has to be spread over the entire heavy mass, therefore it's going to move it very little. One photon hits something with very little mass, then it's going to move it much faster because it doesn't have to spread it as thin. So you can get, it's like a certain amount of butter, and you're going to have a big slice of bread versus a little slice of bread. You know, the butter is going to be much thicker. Duh. Alright, wait. Falling involves inertia. Well, it's not just about falling, you dumbass. So you're still not getting it either. So I might as well do the drawing first, because there's no point in... I might as well just qualify the simple point being made. There's lots of problems with the experiment he's doing. Okay, first he's using a magnet and a piece of metal, which means that the magnetism is induced, which means it'll change as the piece of metal moves across the magnet. You're going to change its magnetic field. And so you can't do some sort of standard experiment saying it's the same going in as it is going out, when it's really not the same process, because the magnetism is induced, and it takes time to induce magnetism. Fact. It doesn't happen instantaneously. Alright, but this is the simple argument, is that the experiment basically involves having a magnet. So we'll put the magnet down here. Well, we can go all the way down here. Alright. And the idea is you're going to bring something, an object, into association with the magnet, and then you're going to move it out of association eventually. And you're saying, by theory, this starting point, where it starts to get influenced by the magnet and where it stops being influenced by the magnet, those 2 points should be equidistant. There should be the same amount of energy going in as going out, and so this should be proportionally, these should be equidistant. But the problem is, though, is that when the magnet gets attracted, when this becomes magnetic, so this real magnet, so this is the real magnet, when it induces, so I'll draw induction as a swirly line or something. So when it's inducing the magnetism, this becomes magnetic, and it'll polarize to the opposite pole. So if this is north-south, this will become south-north. And what happens is it swings this way. So it, the magnet sticks before it gets overhead. All right, so it starts to move towards this magnet before it's overhead, so it doesn't stay vertical. So that's number one problem with the experiment, is the magnet can move, it can swing. So obviously what it does when it's going towards the magnet, when you're bringing it into the magnetic field, you can see that this is obviously against gravity. So gravity wants to push it down, it has to fight gravity. So the point at which you'll actually see the magnet move will be slower or behind when it would actually happen if there wasn't this problem of having to overcome gravity to point to the magnet. So the magnet can't freely move and turn to point towards the magnet that it's attracted to. It has to freely turn by moving against gravity. Then the opposite happens when you're pulling away. So when you're pulling away, the magnet is pointing towards the magnet and gravity is pushing down. So now gravity is going to be making it easier. It's going to want to push the magnet out of the magnetic field because you got this extra force acting on it. So it'll happen sooner. So you'll end up thinking these are the real marks. Okay, like this was way slower than it should. I mean, this was happening sooner, slower, and this was happening faster. And that's your disproportion. So there is no real disproportion. If you did the experiment, say, out of a gravitational field, then you would have accurate marks for when the two events happen. The introduction of the magnetic field and the exiting of the magnetic field. So it would be equal, just like gravity, just like all the other things that have ever been done. Every experiment ever conducted in any kind of controlled way, in any kind of scientific way, demonstrates that these are all conservative fields. There is no non-conservative field, And, this is just a desperate effort again to put glitter back in the universe, to say, no, there's no laws. We can violate the laws with our special powers. No, the laws are real. If you find a different result, if you find a field that is not conservative, you're not looking hard enough, okay? Because you missed something. Something that's probably this obvious. And, frankly, you shouldn't have been fooled. That mechanical pencil's a little bit too not bright enough. But you get the idea. So it has to go against gravity going in, and gravity's going to push it out sooner going out. So that's the non-conservative part is being caused by the fact that going in you're against gravity, going out you're with gravity. Simple point. Fuck you. There's no counter argument. Alright. Inertia has been eliminated by your slow movements. So you don't eliminate inertia by moving slow. So that's just kind of silly. And the fact that rotor, stator, or swing arm are held motionless on each side. Well, obviously that's not the experiment he did. Nothing was motionless in the experiment. Shit for brain. The magnet had to indicate when it was being affected by the field, and it has to indicate it by turning. And it can't turn, okay, when it's a pendulum, okay, without going against gravity. Also, falling or change of potential energy is eliminated as the rotor returns to its original attitude when the swing arm is plumb overhead. And again, that just verifies the point that clearly it's in a completely different position when it's overhead, and it's in some other position, okay? So those changes in position are part of what is your recording as when it's being affected. And that's not an accurate way to detect when you're in the magnetic field, if gravity is going to treat the two differently. That's when the stator, rotor, and suspension point are directly center, and plumb rotor has the same height as it started. So, that doesn't mean anything. It's about him making marks, not when it was plumb. He was making the marks when he decided it's entering the field. And he was detecting when it's entering the field based on when it turns. And when it turns is delayed by going against gravity, going in, and it's made quicker going out because your gravity's pushing you out. The fact that the rotor is being pulled uphill, okay, so you're conceding it's a fact. The rotor is trying to fall on both sides of the stator. There's no stator. I don't even know why you're using this terminology. Okay, there really isn't, and none of this stuff is in his experiment. The gravitational acceleration towards the center of the Earth is same on both sides. Yeah, that's not the point. The point is on one side it's going against gravity, the other side it's going with gravity. Is the professor dude so self-assured? Yes, I'm quite confident in the fact that going up means you're going against gravity, and going down means you're going with gravity. Yeah, I'm quite confident, fuckhead. Conceit, determined to say closed-minded. Yes, I'm closed-minded on the subject of up is against gravity and down is with gravity. There's no other choices. That's it. That's the facts. I'm closed the fuck minded on that subject. Shithead. Trying to protect evil or XYZ. You're the coward. Again, let's do a live room, fuckhead. If you're so fucking smart, and let me interrogate you on your knowledge of physics, but I'm sure it's got fucking jujubes and glitter and gummy bears and all kinds of bullshit in it. You can't see this rotor is being pulled uphill, so he puts this in capital again. Pulled uphill. What are you talking about? I mean, frankly, you're just conceding that it's not moving. You're not keeping everything on the same linear line, and you are moving with gravity and against gravity at different points in the experiment, and you're not conceding that that's going to fuck up the experiment, blowing up on the magnet. Like say if I just had an air gun and I shot air, and then I shot air. You don't think that would screw up the experiment, dumbass? And falling has zero to do with this observed discovery. So he thinks again it's a discovery. He's discovered a non-conservative field with a magnet. a single magnet and a piece of metal, and he's broken one of the fundamental laws of physics. No, he hasn't. What he's demonstrated, which has been demonstrated 5 million times before, is that you desperate tinfoil hatters are just anti. You're just anti. You're not more rational or more reasonable. You don't hate physics because it is a fairy tale. You hate it because it's not your fairy tale. You want a fairy tale that has 3 pigs in it, and it's got Goldilocks. You don't like Goldilocks. She's a bitch. You're fucking such jackasses. You don't even know why you should be dissident. You're just dissident because it's fun to be weird. You're just one of these idiots with purple hair. I occurred to me, P.S. I occurred to me while watching this, blonde dude's explanation requires asymmetrical field to work. Well, complete bullshit there, thank you very much. I didn't establish any conditions at all. I just pointed out how there's an obvious flaw. You're measuring the wrong, you can't measure what you're trying to measure in the field you're trying to measure it in, okay? So until you take the experiment out of gravity, you're not going to be able to accurately measure this effect. God, what a fucking idiot. So, you know, somehow blonde dude, what the hell is that crap anyway? You know, is this how you talk? Do you talk to people? Black dude? Do you say that? Kinky haired dude? Big nose dude? What the fuck is that crap? You think you can take liberties like that? Yeah, so what? I have blonde hair and I have long hair. Do you do this every fucking time you address somebody? Skinhead dude? Do you do that? Beard dude? Is that how you interact with human beings? You fucking cunt. I mean, people you don't even know. This is how you introduce yourself, is by walking up to them and saying, "Hey, big nose dude." Is that what you do? Fuckhead? Hey, fat dude. Fuck you. I mean, yeah. I mean, maybe you're used to it. Maybe that's the way things go, because every time you walk up to somebody, they go, "Hey, smelly ass dude." You know? And you haven't figured it out yet. Fucking asshole. Fuck you. God, people just suck. Alright, so there still just isn't anything on the internet. It's just this void of any kind of possibility for conversation. You know, just this desperate, you know, these desperate, look, I'm a chick doing physics videos. Yeah, right. Got it. So the Michael Van Briesen guy, I like that he was answering questions, but of course he's going to answer questions that just don't have anything to do with anything. How big is the universe? Oh, how the fuck could anyone fucking goddamn fucking know? Oh, that's right, they can't. Because frankly, we can't see far enough to know. You can just speculate in the sense that when you see things that are really far away, they get really big. And I mean really small and really bright, indicating that the galaxies start off really small in the past. That's about it. Doesn't tell you bigness. You're just looking back in time. That's all you can do. But anyway, just and you have to figure that whatever the universe is, like how far you can see, okay, you'd have to figure that for stuff to get that far away, it had to take as much time as what you're seeing it in that location. So it would have to be twice as big as what it looks like it is, or some kind of bullshit like that. But who could care? Who could care? How could the answer to that question provide any insight into anything whatsoever? I mean, if I gave you the answer, how would it help? What relevance would it have? It has just no meaning as a question. It doesn't change or improve or do anything to the physics, understanding the physics at all. It's not even a relevant physics question, because there's just no real kind of evidence to back anything on. But I mean, what use is the information? It just can't mean anything. Just, you know, more things for me to be irritated by. That's all. All right, so I guess I'll just add some stuff. I mean, I've been doing some writing, attempting to, you know, got to do some rewriting of my theory just to make it more understandable. Easier, I guess, for the retards because they just can't seem to get the ideas, unless you put it in bold type. There's this thing called force. Forces move the speed of light. Now you can say that, and then somehow they'll hear, there's bananas, and they can move any kind of speed they want to, or something like that. I mean, no matter how precise and direct you make your language, they just keep turning it into shit somehow in terms of what they're hearing to make it more complicated than it is, or whatever. And it really isn't all that complicated. I mean, this idea that there's a bunch of this stuff called energy, and we have it in different forms: gravity, magnetism, and photons that we see. And the photons we know that exist, the radio waves, but we aren't seeing. We know they're there, bombarding us, interacting with our substance, reflecting and being absorbed as heat, energy. So all this stuff we can sort of draw a little picture of it, and that's basically how the universe functions. There's stuff moving the speed of light, and then everything else is doing something else much slower. Okay, that's basically the rule. And so what's happening is the big stuff moves much slower than the little stuff, the force stuff. And then it's just a matter of understanding how is the momentum of the little stuff imposed on the big stuff. It's like, I've said it overtly, but I mean, electrons and protons don't do anything until something acts on them. So it's back to the Newton thing. The matter is dead, and so it's just corpses. And any animation they have because a force acted on them to give them life. So they don't have any, they're puppets, they're wooden puppets, and the strings are the forces. The forces are what decides everything that happens. And everything that's happening is always happening on the small universe scale. I mean, the little universe is the only universe. There is no big universe. They're not like two different kinds of places. No, there's only one universe. It's the small one. And it has some features like the big one, in the sense that it has this stuff called nothing, empty space, and it has the stump things that travel through it, that move across it, that do something called distance. So anyway, I have a couple of pages of notes, but I have to put it into some sort of ordered conversation, I suppose. But really, it's all back to these simple points I keep making: push versus pull. Let's just start with that. Let's start with, if I'm going to make action in the universe, what's the simplest way I can make action? So if we understand, we can see there's these clumps of matter, electrons and protons. What's the simplest way I can cause action? Well, the simplest thing I can do is throw a rock at one of them and make it move. I mean, that's the simplest mechanism. Push. You hit something with something that has momentum, and the momentum is shared, or in the case of this real physics, the momentum is absorbed. The little hunk of momentum gets stuck inside of the thing, and it stays in there. It's going around in a circle. It gets trapped inside the matter bit. It's now rowing in the matter boat, and that's where it stays until some other force forces it to jump out, and a new little rower pops in. So I'll close the notebook because I can't really read notes and do video. And so it's, and so you can break this down to such a simple dynamic just by starting at the right place. And so just start with a simple question. I mean, what's the simplest action possible, imaginable? And the simplest action is hitting something. Now, how do you do pull as a simple action? It can't possibly be simple, because it has to be, it can't be simple without being magical. And so all you people seem to want to do physics and leave in the magical bits, where it just, it attracts or it repels by magic. Again, I could just, the simple statement. You have a straight line, okay? Now, that in the universe, okay, that's not very straight, but you get the idea. In principle, it's a straight line. In theory, it's a straight line. Okay, in theory. All right, from point A to point B. Now that's real simple. You can understand it. Straight line, I can understand straight line. I can understand point. I can understand straight line to get to another point in space, and the shortest distance straight line. I can understand that. No problems. That's not physically challenging concept. Now, if I curve the line, or I do a Ken Wheeler blah 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 blah, don't I have to explain why this line is curved? What curves it? What's acting on it? Where's the cause for the effect? So you're just looking for causes and effects. So the cause of just going straight, you can understand. The cause of going curve, why would it curve? Doesn't something have to make it curve? Doesn't it have to be doing something to curve? How's it curving? What's the mechanism for the curving? And they do some preposterous curving. You're saying, well, where's the forces? The Earth can't do that. An asteroid can't do that. None of the things we're familiar can do any of that crap. There has to be a very elaborate track it's running on, or there has to be some sort of elaborate mechanism that causes something to do that kind of shit. You can't do that simple. And so again, what do you think? You think the universe gets more complicated the more elemental you go. So the more fundamental the bits get, you think it gets more and more fancy, the universe. It gets more and more eccentric, and you believe that. When I'm just saying, no, logically, you got to know it evolves. It's made out of simpler bits. It starts off simple and it gets complicated. It doesn't start complicated and get simple. You don't start with a complex system to create something as dumb as an asteroid crashing into a planet. That's just retarded. So, this shouldn't be that difficult. This task of me persuading you or getting you to understand that this is what physics should be, is coming up with this elemental description, this model of how the thing works. And you can't have in your model, well, there's this magic thing that happens and it pushes the line crooked because there's geometry bending it. Magical geometry just happens to be bending it with the magical geometry. Magical. I mean, that's bullshit. That's not an explanation. Why is the line curved? We know that the Earth curves, going around the sun. And anybody rational kind of understands, there's a force. Okay, now if you think it's pulling, you should be able to say to yourself, well, what is it pulling with? I mean, does the sun throw hooks on it and pull it? I mean, what pull? How does that work? That doesn't make much sense. So something's obviously pushing. And like I said, 300 years ago, they could figure out that, you got to come up with something that's pushing from the outside. Come on, it's the only reasonable explanation. And so, yes, they say things like an angel did it, but that's stupid. So you come up with a physical explanation, and then you figure out things like, well, there's this cosmic background radiation out there. What if there was a bunch of it that we can't see, undetectable? That could push things together. That works as a model. That explains why things are going around other objects orbiting. That would explain where the force came from, where the push came from. Not that you're not having to break all kind of rationality. That's not a story that's so preposterous that I can't possibly accept that. I mean, I'm not giving you a UFO theory. I'm not telling you 5-headed aliens are making the planet bend. Come on. It's a perfectly valid, reasonable explanation that there's a force acting on it. That's why the Earth travels a curved path. It's because there's two forces. There's the force of its velocity, and there's another force keeps hitting it, keeps changing the direction of its velocity. There, not complicated. But instead, you're clinging to some idiotic notion that space is a something and somehow it's bent, but it's bent in 3 dimensions, which doesn't even make any sense, which means it's just converging, like there's some sort of 3-dimensional vacuum cleaner and it's just pulling everything in with it. How's it doing any of that? Where's the motor? Where's the engine? So again, I explained to people that, no, look, the lines around a magnet are not doing anything. Okay, there's no moving fields in magnetism. You can only move the field by moving the magnet. Okay, so you say you have north and south. I put them backwards. Doesn't really matter. and we have these lines, right? But these aren't real lines. These these lines represent the equality of the force from different locations. The amount of north force and the amount of south force. Okay, so both of these things are radiating force like a sun. Okay, it's coming out in all directions, radiating. And this point just represents equality between the two forces. That's why the compass needle will line up, you know, north-south to the south-north position. And all you're indicating is the balance of the forces at the different locations. And obviously when you're right on the pole, then the north end of the compass is going to be right there, and the south end is going to be right there, because obviously it's not getting any north field influence, so it's not going to twist it at all. But I mean, that's all this is. These lines aren't things moving around the magnet. There's no indication of anything moving around. Oh, it's going out this end and it's coming back in this end. There's no experiment that shows that any of that's happening. You can't drop a piece of atomic confetti in the magnetic field and watch the confetti move around the magnet. It never happens. It'll never happen. It never happens. It will never happen, because it isn't real. This is not a moving field. Okay, it's just radiating energy, just like you radiate heat, and it's radiating in a specific way, in the sense that there's red heat coming out of one end and black heat coming out of the other, or proton heat out of one end and electron heat out of the other end. And that's what makes a magnet. It's polarized. It's producing energy that is that electrons and protons are sensitive to, charged energy. And that's it. So it's just filtering. So energy from the external world, just like gravity, goes into the magnet, and one kind pops out this end and the other kind pops out this end, and that's it. That's a perfectly valid explanation. It explains charge, it explains polarity, and explains why you have inverse reactions of attraction and repulsion. It explains why the magnets move towards each other, why they repel against each other. And it's so simple. And yet you're being obnoxious in your denial and in your rejection and in your defiance. I will not accept a simple explanation. It must be complicated. It must have spooky action. It must have, you know, all kinds of flowy, ethery crap. You don't need any of that crap. All you need is this little bits, quantas of momentum. And the quantas of momentum sometimes can come at specific frequencies. And then you can create things like resonant reflections and all kinds of stuff like that. That gets a little bit complicated, but it's not really very complicated. But no hyperboloids, no fucking toroids, all that crap is just that. It's crap. You're just completely, you know, perverting something dirt simple into something completely and unnecessarily complicated, and you're doing it belligerently. I mean, you're doing it in this obnoxious way, where it should be evident to you already that, you know, yes, I don't have all that many viewers, but you know that some people who know physics must have watched some of these videos, and they're all cowards. They're all afraid to show how I'm wrong, how none of this works, how this can't possibly be the answer. They're afraid to demonstrate how it can't be. You know, that should tell you something. That there just isn't anybody willing to have this conversation, because there's no way they can defeat the argument I'm making. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, the point, you know, I write my notes and I'm just saying, this is so fucking simple. I should, why do I have to do this over and over again? I mean, you know, push, so simple. Pull, fuck that. Can't do it. Have to create some kind of wooey mechanism. It has to have magic, or it has to have all kinds of strings and cords and ropes and bullshit. You know, it's just too stupid. I mean, it's like the Bill Gates theory. There's more rope in his theory than there is stuff. So it's really a string theory, in the sense that he's just might as well just forget the existence of matter and force and just have ropes. I mean, because he's just a rope. You don't need to even have proton, electrons, all that. Just rope. What sense does it make? A bunch of ropes all over the place doing things. Ropes don't do anything. Come on. It's just stupid. I mean, they're turning the white space into the thing and the substance into nothing. So that they think there's a cow in a field, and they're obsessed with the field, and they're just ignoring. There's you know, this dead spot of there's no field where this stupid cow is. You know, it's just got it backwards. It's so backwards. All right, so that's enough. I've said it. I don't know. Like I said, there's no point in me really going over it, just because it's all stuff I've been over before, and you know, it needs to be done in order, just some sort of perfect order, so you get the understanding that, look, it's just not that complicated. Force has all the movement. You know, forces act on matter, hit matter, interact with matter, matter moves, and then matter can give back to force when it stops moving. It's just so obvious. I mean, even the meteor example, it's just so fucking obvious what's going on, right? We say it has a mass, right? And all the mass is how big is the boat? How many rowers can sit in the boat? So that's basically what mass says. How many positions how many pieces of energy can you hold? That's what your mass allows you to do. So mass just means you have a boat of a certain size. And now you can put rowers in it. And what happens through your experience in the universe is that rowers get in your boat. And then they start, to get a new rower, you have to throw out an old rower. So once you fill the boats with rowers, you've got, you know, any new rower has to kick one of the other rowers out. So if you get a new rower going this way, you throw out a rower going the other way. And so your mass changes in directions. So if all the rowers are rowing equally in all directions, you don't do anything, you don't go anywhere, and it looks like you don't have any mass, right? You have zero, you know, you're what do they call that? Weightless. Okay, yeah, you're weightless. Okay, because you're going equally in all directions. There's just you have no velocity. But if you have you have 6 rowers going this way and 4 going that way, well, then you're going to go that way. And the more disproportion I impose on you, the more rowers I throw in going this way, the more you throw out going that way, and the more disproportional it gets, then the more mass you have in that direction. And that's basically what you see with an asteroid or something, or a comet moving through space, and velocity. It gains velocity as it moves into gravity. New rowers are being exchanged, and in a sense its mass is changing from mass that's equal in all directions. Now it doesn't have rowers going this way and this way and this way and this way and all these other ways. It just has rowers going one way, and it gets faster and faster and faster. And once it gets all the rowers going the same way, then maybe it could get up to the speed of light. But it would have to have every single rower going the same way, which is really unlikely. For another rule of physics, another law of physics prevents it. Essentially, and I could explain the law is there's swimmers jumping into the boat all the time from all directions. And so it's really hard to have a perfect moment where you didn't get anybody jumping in from the sides or from some other direction, and all of them are biased in one direction. It'd be very difficult to have a clean, you know, to get everything just right in any moment in your travel where you could get all the rowers being exactly going in the same direction. So you'll never get to the speed of light as a piece of matter. But anyway, but it's just so obvious how my mass changes as you absorb momentum. So if I jump off a 4-foot table, I'll hit the ground as if I weighed 800 pounds. You know, now my mass, my weight didn't really change, but obviously it did, in the sense that I gained a bunch of momentum. I absorbed a bunch of stuff going down, didn't absorb any rowers coming from this way because the earth was blocking them. Absorbed a whole bunch of them going this way, have a huge bias inside, more rowers going one way than the other way, so most of my mass is rowing that way, and less of it's going that way and that way and that way. I mean, it just makes it all understandable. Why, when you shoot a bullet from a gun, well, now the bullet has a whole bunch of rowers going one way and very few going the opposite way. And that's why when it hits something, it appears to have more mass in that one single direction. It doesn't have more mass going backwards. It doesn't have more mass going sideways. It has more mass going that way. Anyway, it's just so fucking obviously, it's so freaking simple. Now, unlike Ken Wheeler says, he says it's simple, and then he comes up with hyperboloids and toroids, and for a photon, a single little photon is doing all this crap. You know, it doesn't even think electrons exist, which doesn't make much sense because, well, then what's creating charge, idiot? If electrons aren't real things, then how do you have polarity? Yeah, and how do you have charge? What's causing it? Shit for brain. Anyway, there's just no point. He'll say, well, that's a left-handed swirl is plus, and a right-handed swirl is minus. Some sort of horse shit, you know. Oh yeah, and that works, huh? Show me a model. You know, build me one of those, and show me how it repels like magnets repel. It's like that stupid dissident science guy. He talks about this stupid fucking idiotic experiment where you spin stuff in water and you can make it slightly repulsive and slightly attractive. I mean, very slightly. So you put a ton of energy in swirling the water and you get a tiny bit of reflective energy or absorption energy. Tiny bit. And somehow that is a parallel to a magnet, which is an incredible amount of energy for tiny little things making a huge, moving lots of matter. You know, so lots of movement for very little energy in, like none. You can't even see the energy in for the magnets. And their analogy is some stupid system where you put 10,000 volts in and you get a millivolt out of a milliwatt of real energy. Just so fucking stupid. But they won't answer, so you can make the point that that doesn't make any sense, and they'll not respond as if the comment hasn't been made. They'll just pretend your counter argument doesn't exist because they're cowards, and they're just dishonest. They won't admit that their theory sucks. It has huge, gaping, gigantic holes in it. You know, you can't eliminate charge as a phenomenon. It is what the universe runs on. Charge is how it knows. That's the segregation of the force. That's what the whole thing is based on. It can't function without it. You know, you can't have attraction and repulsion without it. Anyway, enough said. Until next time and such. It's just so damn annoying. This whole process. Science is just shit. Absolute full of just shitheads. Cowardly shitheads. I don't need to do that. I need to do this. Okay. Save recording and such. Till the next time. Such.